Salutations everyone, my name is Allan Aldroid and I am a war veteran. Don't believe me? But what if I told you that I'm a proud survivor of the current console wars? Because nothing's flipping happened.
The console wars. Everyone's got a story to tell about them. Console wars have existed for as long as console gaming has. However, the conflict soared to new heights with the 16-bit era of gaming. The battle between the Sega Genesis and the Super Nintendo was a brutal one, with both companies furiously trying to prove to the general public that their system was the best. Sega's famous Genesis does what Nintendo tagline, boasting about the console's arcade-like graphics and blast processing, whatever that meant, versus Nintendo's Now You're Playing with Superpower, bragging about their own console's power with Mode 7, 32,000 colours and Paul Rudd jump scare. And as time went on, the console wars became even more ruthless. The 90s to the noughties proved to be a bloodbath for consoles, as new competitors entered the ring determined to prove themselves, while some of the old guard were beaten into submission, never to return to the console market again. PlayStation, Xbox, young blood coming out loud and proud about what their hardware can do, shaking up the status quo and bringing a plethora of games to the world to prove to everyone that if you could only have one console, it had to be theirs. But if we skip forward a couple of decades to today, it feels like that competition is no more. This current generation of gaming feels really undercooked to me. It started off with such ferocity, incredible next-gen technology at the forefront, a wave of highly anticipated games showing what each new console could do, systems selling out in seconds. But after that first year, it's felt so stagnant. Coupled with the rumblings of Project Helix for Xbox and the PlayStation 6 being in development, it doesn't feel like this generation's had time to fully breathe. And by jumping over to new hardware, it's not going to magically solve the current issues plaguing game consoles. Today, I'd like to take you by the hand through the console wars of yesteryear, see how different companies would one-up each other trying to prove their worth, and while the war may never be over, share my thoughts on how this chapter will be ending on a whimper. I've narrowed down the issues plaguing game consoles to these key points: hardware, price, and most importantly, games. Now, you don't need to be a master at all to beat the competition, but sometimes being too good at one can ruin you. We're going to run through each point and talk about how certain consoles excelled or flopped, what their respective companies tried to do to fix the problem, and how this issue is currently plaguing the console market today. Starting off with hardware. When talking about consoles hardware, I'm not only referring to how powerful it is, as while power can go a long way in selling your console, sometimes it's not always what's important. The Wii and Nintendo Switch are prime examples of this. Both systems underpowered compared to the offerings of Sony and Microsoft in that generation, but beyond a shadow of a doubt obliterated them from a sales standpoint. Appealing to a more casual audience did wonders for Nintendo, creating games that anyone of all ages could get stuck into, whilst making sure to tailor some games to a more experienced crowd. Most of the time, you can counter the fact that your console is not as powerful by excelling in other places, such as an affordable price point and some stellar games. Another example of this has to be the PlayStation. While the 16-bit era of gaming was when the console battles truly started, the release of the PlayStation is what I'd consider to be the true start of the war. Beforehand, while you could argue one system was better than the other, I think it's safe to say that there wasn't a true winner this generation. Jumping into the next era of gaming, yeah, the PlayStation absolutely won. The introduction of disc-based software marked a massive turning point in the console wars. CDs were the future, and everybody knew it. Except for Nintendo. After announcing that their brand new console, the Nintendo 64, would be cartridge-based, third-party developers all flocked to the PlayStation, due to CDs being able to store far more data compared to the archaic cartridges. Classic franchises that you would only get on Nintendo, such as Final Fantasy and Castlevania, all jumped ship to Sony, bringing over so many fans to the system and proving that in the console wars, it wasn't just about appealing to the consumers, but also to the developers. Cartridges for the N64 were more expensive to produce compared to a CD, and could only hold a maximum of 64 megabytes. Compare that to the more affordable CDs that could store 660 megabytes, yeah, this was a no-brainer. The games for this system were huge, so huge that sometimes they would span over multiple discs, but since it was cheaper to make, developers went all in on it. The Sega Saturn, however, ended up being a prime example of how to lose in the console wars. While the system was way ahead of its time with its 2 CPUs working in tandem with each other, ultimately it was too complex for most developers to adapt to. Pair that with a mandated surprise launch to try and combat the PlayStation, and it's easy to see why the Saturn flopped. With the next generation of consoles, Microsoft entered the fray with the Xbox, and while it was a beast of a machine, coming in with the fastest processing speed on the market and double the RAM of the PS2, Sony soared past the competition, selling over 160 million units compared to the Xbox's 24 million. Sony had the brand recognition, the games, and added multimedia features to the PS2 that made it a no-brainer of a purchase. DVDs were all the rage, but buying a DVD player was not cheap, coming in at an average asking price of over £300 here in the UK. The PlayStation 2 came with DVD support from the get-go and was slightly cheaper than a standalone DVD player, so why wouldn't you go for it? You can watch all of your DVDs and play some of the best games on the market on one amazing system. Xbox was able to play DVDs, but you needed to buy an additional peripheral to use it. PlayStation just had it from the get-go. The GameCube, on the other hand, was unfortunately stuck with the standard Nintendo stink, and while Nintendo were finally embracing discs, sure man, whatever. While the GameCube was the more affordable system and had terrific first and third party offerings, it came in close to beating the Xbox, but ultimately took third place this time. This goes to show that sometimes power isn't everything, especially to the consumer, but hardware is incredibly important for developers. Of course, that's not to say that specs aren't important. As games are getting more and more advanced, you need to make sure your system is as powerful as possible to keep up with the gaming industry for at least 5 or so years. And the games releasing now are so gorgeous that you can't even begin to imagine them running on anything else. But as consoles get more powerful, the prices are only gonna go up. Prices and hardware do overlap quite a lot, as you might expect. The more stuff your console can do, the more expensive it's going to get. So you have to create a balance between what the consumers want compared to what's being stuck in the machine for funsies. Case in point, the PS3. Just like the N64, the PS3 is a great example of why you should never rest on your laurels. Building up to the release of the PlayStation 2, Sony were extremely cautious, as even though the PlayStation 1 was so popular, they knew that it wouldn't automatically mean that a sequel would be just as successful. Did that stop Sony from jumping the shark with the PS3? Absolutely not. This time they decided to go all out on the features, adding in so many odds and sods that absolutely ballooned production costs, and despite their best efforts to pinch the pennies, ended up releasing the machine at $500, with a 60GB version being around $600. Couple that with an absolutely confusing marketing strategy and the fact that the cheaper 20GB model was absent in certain markets like the PAL regions, this system struggled heavily, leading Xbox 360 to be the de facto system for hardcore gamers. What the PS3 had in hardware, it lacked in affordability and made it a really hard sell for most people. The same could be said with the initial release of the 3DS. Solid technology, but with an asking price of 230 quid at launch, it was a hard sell for most people. However, all wasn't lost, and while a console might flop at first, a company can easily turn it round for the better. The 3DS, for example, had an unprecedented price cut 6 months down the line, cutting 30% of the original price down to £150, with some places even offering it cheaper. The PS3, however, went for a different approach, coming out with a wonderful hardware revision in 2009 with the PS3 Slim. This was the saving grace for Sony, gutting out all the unnecessary bits and bobs that bloated the price, streamlined design, no-nonsense marketing, and a hefty price cut that ended up giving the PS3 a much-needed resurrection, essentially a soft reboot for the console. Alright, after that mini deep dive, or shallow dive, I guess, it's time to talk about the meat and potatoes of this video. Why I think the console wars are well and truly over. For starters, technology in gaming's so advanced now it's hard for each system to outperform the other, and even if they can, it's no longer a priority. Extra features such as the DVD/Blu-ray player or access to streaming is expected across Xbox and PlayStation, whereas Nintendo have opted out, focusing on just being a game console. The only thing they offer on the streaming front is YouTube, and that's not even available on the Switch too. I'd say that this is a bummer, but clearly other people don't think so. Xbox and PlayStation are arguably very similar in terms of hardware specs, and with the release of the Nintendo Switch 2, visually the gap's been closing even more between the three companies. Hell, most of the marketing for the Switch 2 was showing off its power, especially on the third-party support. Resident Evil Requiem Pragmata, a FromSoft game exclusive to Switch 2? While this might seem like the industry standard, the fact that these games are now not only playable but look really good on Switch 2 is phenomenal. Do they look the best that they'll ever will? No, but looking at this comparison, the differences being that the PS5 can run hair physics better is a wonderful trade-off compared to... This generation had all three companies coming out swinging with just how powerful these consoles are. When these consoles were unveiled to the world, the excitement was palpable. How could you look at all of these features and not be excited? But after that initial push, what's left? What I think is plaguing the console wars the most can be attributed to the last and ultimately most important point in what makes a console a must-have for gamers: the games. At the start of the PS5 and Switch 2's life, we got a lot of upgraded versions of previous games that were already playable on the new console with backwards compatibility. Oh yay, another re-release of The Last of Us. Tune in next time when the PS6 releases to be able to see Joel's lungs intaking oxygen in 8K. Remasters are great at showing off the power of a new console, but they aren't really system sellers. A free upgrade is one thing, but buying a brand new version of a game that was remade for the current gen while being remastered on the previous gen and released on the gen before that? Wow, maybe you should just make a new game instead! I don't even feel like this generation of gaming's managed to make its own mark on the world, and they've kind of just given up. It doesn't help that development cycles are getting longer and longer, and with how expensive they are, companies are less willing to try out new stuff. I think a fundamental issue regarding consoles and how I believe the console wars are over is that the reasons to pick up one console over the other is practically non-existent, especially on the game front. Sony and Microsoft, to me at least, feel like they're resting on their laurels. They know people are gonna buy their consoles, so they're not even trying outside of the wow, look how many pixels we can render now. They're not competing anymore, they're just going through the motions. There's no competition, no boundaries being pushed, no experiences that you can't get anywhere else. We're in this weird vacuum of console gaming consumerism that just feels bland. Okay, it's time for the big guns now, the console exclusives. Aside from Nintendo, console exclusives don't exist anymore.
This alone could be a topic for another video, and trust me, it will be. I have a lot to say on the subject matter, such as if console exclusives are a good thing or not. However, I've left my bread sandwich in the oven, so I want to wrap this up before it burns.
The PS5 is such an interesting case study into how a console can go from incredible highs to the butt of a joke. When it released, it was pandemonium, units were flying off the shelves, it was sold out everywhere. Nowadays, one of the biggest jokes surrounding the PS5 is that it has no games. Here's a question for you, can you name 5 exclusive games that the PS5 has? No? Don't worry, I don't think anybody can. Oh, what's that? You can? Well, first of all, look at this nerd. Second of all, congratulations! You've managed to name just under a quarter of the games on the PlayStation 5. The Nintendo Switch 2's been out for around a year now, and it has more exclusive games than the PlayStation 5. And that console's been out for 6 years now. Do you know what annoys me more? It's not that the PS5 has no games, it's not that these consoles are becoming more and more of a hard sell, it's that Xbox has been getting away with having no games for years and people don't bully them enough for that. Can you name a single Xbox game? No, you can't. I can't think of a single Xbox exclusive game that's released this entire generation. This might be my bias talking, as I've never been an Xbox guy and I've never found a reason to buy one. There might be an amazing Xbox original game that I haven't seen, but nothing has come out recently that has warranted an excuse to sink £500 into an Xbox Series X. What other reasons do we have? It's cheaper than the PS5? That may be true, but the PS5 actually has games I want to play. Except they're all on the PC now, so why would I ever want to buy a PS5? We've been in this current generation of gaming for over 6 years now, and I don't feel like it's even started yet. Granted, I'm more of a PC gamer now, so console generations haven't really mattered as much to me anymore, but I don't see the push from these companies to one-up each other. It feels like we're in this weird grey area where no one really knows what to do. Do we continue forth with these current consoles, or do we start again and release a PS6 or Xbox, whatever they call it, in hopes that it might revive some interest? I know I sound like I'm glorifying these companies, and I don't mean to. I know what some of you are saying. Why do you care that these consoles have no games? You're not Microsoft, stop complaining. And yeah, that's fair. From a consumer's point of view, what is there to complain about? We are getting games. We're all getting games. Games we all want to play. Except if you're Xbox. Quite frankly, this is the best era we've had in gaming in terms of accessibility, especially for PC gamers like myself. Just the fact that I can play The Last of Us, PlayStation's biggest franchise, on the same device I file my taxes on is incredible. We're no longer locked to having certain games on certain consoles. It's no longer, you like shooters, pick up Xbox, or you like your story games, pick up PlayStation. The console market is very different to the PC market, and I'm not advocating for everyone to hop onto PC gaming. Just because I prefer PC now doesn't mean that I don't or didn't value consoles. If I can justify the price, I'd buy it. Console gaming is more accessible and arguably cheaper than PC gaming in general. I like my Nintendo, so I bought a Switch too. I like the Spider-Man games, but they're all on PC now, so why would I need a PS5? And I think these companies are taking note of that. Sony are cutting back on PC ports of their upcoming games. Xbox's new CEO, Asher Sharma, is aiming to make the company more game-focused by bringing down Game Pass subscriptions and killing off any and all Copilot support that fans have been complaining about for ages now. And with the new generation approaching quicker and quicker, it seems like we're going to be gearing up for another resurgence in the console wars soon. Consoles need games. Games bring value. Value that you won't get anywhere else. And speaking of value, the price hikes.
I presume that you are all well versed enough with the state of the world at the moment, especially in the technology sector, to know why a price hike was inevitable. Prices are going up, we're in a cost of living crisis, and thanks to the AI bubble, components such as RAM and hard drives are becoming more scarce. And with scarcity comes price hikes. The US has been hit far more in my opinion thanks to certain extra factors of the tariff variety, but since they don't affect me...
I'm sure these companies don't want to be raising the prices, especially Xbox and PS5, since these consoles have been on the market for over half a decade now. But there's definitely ways to go around it to make the punch sting a little less. Nintendo have recently announced a Switch 2 price increase, however, they've announced a date for when the console prices are due to go up, with around 3 to 4 months time with a considerable amount of apologies to boot. Xbox has also gone up in price, however not as much as you might think, only going up £20 or so, which is far better than the PS5's £90 price hike. Holy moly. It's bad enough that the prices have gone up, but the PS5's done it twice now, but announced them less than a week before they come into effect, turning it into a double whammy of ouchie. I mean, when these consoles launched, they weren't cheap at all, and apparently removing a disc drive was enough to cheapen the console by £100, but I've already complained about that before, so I shan't waste your time repeating myself. Yeah, we can restart the console wars on brand new hardware, wipe the slate clean, but from what I've seen, excitement for a new generation is at an all-time low, and if we turn around and see Sony and Microsoft announce a new console, I think it's just going to leave a sour taste in many people's mouth. Do I think the console wars are over? No, because it will never end. Companies will still try and push out new consoles, fans will continuously debate on which system is better, and companies are rethinking their business strategies for the upcoming generation. So I think we'll be entering another console war soon, But I don't think anyone can really afford that. There's no point in moving on. Where is there to go with how great gaming looks already? So why not do what previous generations did? The war between consoles may be dead in this generation, but it doesn't mean you have to stop trying. Try a soft reboot, polish the consoles up a bit, give people a reason to want your products. Don't throw what we have at the moment away because it's not making sales expectations. Oh, sugar my sandwich!
Maybe I talk too much.
Thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy it and you haven't already, please consider giving this a like and maybe subscribe if you want to see more. I'll see you all in the next one.